For a long time, nothing happens. The sky stays quiet. The stars hold their places. And somewhere far beyond Mars, an object drifts silently through the dark. No alarms, no headlines, just another faint point of light moving along the ecliptic, exactly where math says it should be. At least, that's how it starts. For months, observers track 3I-ATLAS as it moves inward, closer to the sun. They don't expect drama. They don't expect mystery. Because space is full of visitors like this. Cold, ancient, leftovers from the birth of star systems. Most are simple to understand. You measure their brightness. You chart their path. You log the data and move on. This one is supposed to be the same. Night after night, telescopes sweep the sky. Cameras blink open for seconds at a time, collecting faint light that has traveled millions of kilometers just to reach Earth. To the naked eye, there's nothing special here. No tail, no glow, just a moving dot, barely brighter than the background stars. But science doesn't look with eyes. It looks with patterns. And patterns are where this story begins to change. Every rotating object in space tells a quiet story through its light curve. As it spins, bright areas face us, and dark ones. The brightness rises. It falls, over and over. It's simple, predictable, like a heartbeat. Astronomers have seen this thousands of times before. They know what natural rotation looks like. They know how ice reflects sunlight. They know how dust scatters it. So when the first full light curve for 3I, ATLAS arrives, it should fit. But it doesn't. At first, it's subtle, almost easy to miss. A rise that comes too early. A dip that lasts a little too long. A rhythm that feels off. Not broken, just wrong. The data gets checked again. Same result. Maybe it's noise, someone says. A glitch in the sensor. Cosmic rays hitting the detector. Reasonable explanations. Comfortable ones. So they clean the data. They remove interference. They smooth the curve. And still, it refuses to behave. The brightness doesn't follow a smooth cycle. It hesitates. It spikes. Then it settles, as if correcting itself. That's when the room gets quiet. Because space doesn't hesitate. Natural objects don't pause mid-pattern. They don't adjust. They just spin. Someone suggests the surface might be uneven, jagged, strange geometry. That happens sometimes. But when models are run with extreme shapes, they still can't recreate what's being seen. The light curve keeps slipping away from every explanation. And now the question changes. Not, what is it? But why doesn't it act like anything we know? As days pass, more data arrives. Different telescopes, different angles, different nights. The anomaly survives all of it. This isn't one bad observation. This is consistency. The brightness changes aren't random. They repeat. Not perfectly, but deliberately enough to make scientists uneasy. A pattern that looks like it wants to be regular, but never quite settles. Like something trying to hold a shape, and failing just slightly. Still, no one panics. Because science doesn't jump to conclusions. It slows down. Papers aren't written yet. Emails are careful. Language stays neutral. Words like interesting, unusual, worth monitoring. No one says anomaly out loud. Not yet. But it's there, quietly sitting between the lines. Out in space. 3I, ATLAS keeps moving, closer to the sun, closer to the point where heat should wake it up. Normally, this is where things get messy. Ice begins to boil, jets form, brightness increases in chaotic ways. That chaos is familiar, expected, but even before any of that happens, before perihelion is anywhere near, the light curve is already misbehaving. That's the problem, because there's no heat yet, no reason for activity, no explanation for change. It's too early for fireworks, which means whatever is causing this is already there, somewhere deep inside the object, or on its surface, or in the way it interacts with light itself. Late one night, someone overlays the curve with rotational models one last time. Not expecting much, just doing their job. And for a moment, it almost fits. Almost. Then the curve drifts again. Just enough to break the match. That's when the word finally appears in a private note. Anomaly. Not in a headline, not in a press release. Just a quiet label attached to a file. But once you name something, it becomes real. From that moment on, 3i ATLAS is no longer routine. It's watched more closely, scheduled more often, compared more carefully. Every new data point feels heavier than the last, because the sky hasn't changed. The instruments haven't changed, but the certainty has. And beneath all the math, beneath all the careful language, a feeling begins to form. A simple one. This object is not behaving like it should. Still, no one knows why. Is it an odd chunk of rock? A surface we've never seen before? A rare interaction with sunlight? Or is this the first hint that something about its origin is different? For now, the sky keeps its secret. 3i ATLAS continues its silent approach, unchanged to the eye, but increasingly strange on every chart. And as the light curve bends again, just slightly, one thought lingers in the back of every mind watching it. If this is only the beginning, what happens when it gets closer? Something changes. And this time, no one misses it, as 3i ATLAS moves closer to the sun. The sky doesn't react. No sudden flare. No dramatic tail. Just light. Sunlight hitting its surface and coming back wrong. At first, it's subtle. A slight increase in brightness. Nothing unusual. That's expected. As objects near perihelion, they warm up. Ice loosens. Dust lifts. They glow more. But this glow doesn't behave like a glow. Instead of rising smoothly, the reflectivity jumps. Step by step, up. Hold, down. Hold. Clean edges. Sharp transitions, like someone flipping a switch. Astronomers stare at the charts in silence, because nature doesn't like steps. It likes curves. Heat spreads gradually. Surfaces brighten slowly. Nothing in space snaps from one state to another, not without violence. And there is no violence here, no eruption, no debris cloud, no chaos. Just light changing in clean blocks. One moment dull. The next brighter, not fading, not blooming, switching. The reflectivity curve looks wrong in a new way. Before, it was messy, unstable. Now, it's precise. Too precise. The object completes a rotation, and the pattern repeats. Not perfectly, but close enough to raise eyebrows. The brightness doesn't slide. It locks into levels, plateaus, like surfaces turning toward the sun, then away with intent. Someone suggests crystalline ice, exotic compounds, rare surface chemistry, all reasonable ideas. So they run the simulations. Different materials, different textures, different angles. Nothing fits. To get steps like this, the surface would need boundaries sharper than anything erosion creates. Edges that stay aligned, faces that reflect light in controlled directions. That's not how rocks behave. That's not how ice behaves. That's not how comets behave. And yet, there it is. The sun keeps rising behind it. The distance keeps shrinking. And with every new observation, the steps become clearer. Brighter plateaus, darker gaps. Almost rhythmic, almost intentional. No one says that word yet. Intentional. Because saying it changes everything. So instead, they say unusual reflectivity behavior. They say non-linear response. They say first shift. But privately, the questions grow louder. Why does the surface appear to reorient itself? Why does the reflectivity stabilize, then suddenly change? Why does it act like it's choosing when to shine? One late observation adds fuel to the unease. Two telescopes, thousands of kilometers apart, record the same step at the same time. Same brightness jump, same duration. Different angles. That shouldn't happen. If it were random terrain, each angle would look different. If it were dust, it would scatter unevenly. But this is synchronized, as if the object knows where the sun is and where we are. That thought doesn't make it into any report, but it lingers. Hanging in the room, someone points out that the steps align with rotation markers, as if certain faces are activating, then going dark. Faces, not fragments, not dust clouds. Faces, flat regions, defined regions. The reflectivity curve starts to look less like geology and more like geometry. And that's dangerous territory. Because geometry implies structure. Structure implies design. Design implies purpose. The sun doesn't care about purpose. Neither do rocks. But this pattern feels like something responding to exposure, like a system adjusting itself. Still, the object remains silent. No radio signal. No emission spike. No message. Just reflected sunlight, changing its mind. Outside the data rooms, the world goes on. People sleep. Cities glow. No one knows an argument is unfolding in quiet labs over quiet screens. An argument about whether nature can be this clean. Some say yes. Nature surprises us all the time. We've been wrong before. Others aren't so sure, because surprises still follow rules. And this feels like a rule we don't recognize. As perihelion draws nearer, the steps become more pronounced, sharper, almost confident. The reflectivity no longer drifts, it commits. Bright, dark, bright again. Each state held just long enough to be noticed, long enough to be measured, long enough to be undeniable. At some point, someone stops calling it noise entirely. They call it behavior. That word doesn't belong to objects. It belongs to systems, living or built. And that's when the tension truly sets in. Because if this is a system, it has an origin, and origins matter. Was this shaped by forces we don't yet understand, or by hands we've never seen? No one has answers, only better instruments and deeper unease. As the sun grows larger in its sky, 3ITLAS continues its strange dance of light, not exploding, not falling apart, just adjusting, responding, shifting. And somewhere between those sharp steps on a chart, a line is crossed. From curiosity to concern. Because smooth curves are comforting, steps are not. And the question no longer feels academic. If nature didn't make this pattern, then what did? And why is it revealing itself now? At first it looks like nothing, just a flicker, a tiny rise in brightness, barely above the noise, the kind of thing scientists usually ignore. Space is messy. Detectors shake. Cosmic rays hit sensors at random. So when the first pulse appears in the data, no one reacts. They scroll past it. But then it happens again. Same rise, same drop, same duration. A clean pulse. Still, one telescope means nothing. One instrument can lie. So they wait. Hours later, another dataset arrives. Different observatory, different continent. And there it is again. The same pulse, same shape, same strength, same timing. Now people lean forward, because coincidence has limits. The pulses aren't dramatic. They don't scream for attention. They whisper. A gentle increase in brightness, then a return to baseline, like a heartbeat heard through a wall. At first, they're spaced far apart, easy to dismiss. But as more data stacks up, a pattern emerges. Pulse, pause, pulse. Not random, not drifting, repeating. Someone overlays the timing from multiple instruments. The result is unsettling. The pulses line up to the second. Telescopes separated by oceans, seeing the same change at the same moment. That shouldn't happen. Light travel time alone should smear it out. Angles should distort it, but the signal holds, clean, sharp, as if it's anchored to the object itself, not the observer. The room grows quiet again. This is no longer about reflectivity. This is no longer about surface texture. This is rhythm, and rhythm implies control. Natural objects fluctuate, they don't pulse. Comets vent gas in bursts, yes, but those bursts are chaotic, irregular, messy. This isn't messy, this is measured. The brightness rises for a precise interval, falls for a precise interval. Then waits exactly the same amount of time before repeating. Someone whispers the word periodicity. Someone else pulls up known astrophysical processes. Rotation? No. Rotation is already accounted for. Jet activity? Too unstable. Magnetic interaction? Doesn't fit the distance or environment. Every familiar explanation slides off the data. The pulses continue anyway. Soft, persistent, unbothered by human doubt. As days pass, the timing tightens. What began as an odd repeat becomes a schedule. Pulse every few hours, then slightly faster. Always consistent, never drifting, never missing. If this were noise, it would break. It doesn't. Someone suggests instrumentation error again. A shared software bug. So they compare raw, unprocessed data. Different pipelines. Different teams. Same result. The pulse survives every attempt to kill it. That's when the question changes. Not, is this real? But what kind of thing produces this? Because precision is expensive in nature. It requires energy, stability, feedback, things that don't just happen. One researcher plots the pulses against the object's distance from the sun. The alignment is uncomfortable. As solar exposure increases, the pulse strengthens. Not wildly, just enough. Like something waking up or tuning itself. Still, no emissions are detected. No radio bursts. No lasers. Just reflected sunlight, modulated in time, as if the object is using the sun's light to say something without speaking. That thought stays unspoken for now. Late one night, someone does a simple thing. They count. They measure the interval between pulses, down to the second, and they freeze. Because the timing isn't just consistent, it's exact. Not 3.9 hours, not 4.1, 4 hours on the dot. Over and over. Nature doesn't like round numbers. Physics produces ugly decimals, long strings, approximations. Clean intervals belong to clocks, to machines, to systems built to keep time. No one says that yet, but everyone feels it. This doesn't feel like a flicker anymore. It feels like a signal. Not a message, but a behavior. Like a lighthouse rotating in the dark. Not aimed at us, not trying to be seen, just operating. Someone asks the question everyone is thinking. What if it's not pulsing for us at all? What if this is internal? A system cycling power, releasing heat, balancing load. The idea hangs in the air, because if that's true, then the pulse is a side effect. And side effects imply function. The sun grows larger in its sky. The object keeps its pace. Pulse, pause, pulse. Each one lands like a soft knock on the door of certainty. Outside, no one notices. There are no headlines yet. But inside the data rooms, a line has been crossed. This is no longer just observation. It's monitoring. Because if the timing changes, if the pulse accelerates, if it stops, that will mean something. Silence would mean something. And that's when the unthinkable question finally surfaces. Quietly, carefully. What creates a signal so precise, without intending to? No one answers. They just keep watching. Because whatever this is, it's counting time. And time in space is never counted without a reason. As the next pulse arrives, right on schedule, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. The data isn't just showing motion anymore. It's showing behavior. And behavior suggests choice. Which means the mystery of 3i ATLAS has shifted again. From what is it made of to something far more unsettling. What is it doing? Heat is honest. In space, it has rules. Clear ones, unforgiving ones. When something moves closer to the sun, it warms, slowly, predictably. There are equations for this. Old equations, tested for decades. So when the thermal data for 3i, a TLAS arrives, no, one expects surprises. They expect a curve, a smooth climb in temperature as sunlight grows stronger, a gradual response, cause and effect. But the numbers don't rise smoothly. They jump, then they fall. Then, strangest of all, they stabilize, as if heat itself has been told to stop. At first, it looks like an error. Thermal sensors are sensitive. Space is harsh. Readings can drift. So they recalibrate. Cross-check. Run the data again. The pattern remains. The object heats rapidly, then cools just as fast. Too fast. Faster than radiation should allow. Faster than bare rock. Faster than ice. Faster than any natural surface exposed to the sun. This isn't just unexpected. It's impossible. Because heat doesn't vanish. It lingers. It bleeds away slowly. Unless something is helping it leave. Unless something is moving it. The thermal curve looks wrong. Not chaotic. Not noisy. Organized. Temperature surges to a peak. Holds briefly. Then drops sharply. Over and over. Surge. Hold. Collapse. Like breathing, but not quite. Because breathing is messy. This is clean, engineered clean. The object isn't overheating. It's not boiling off material. There's no plume, no debris cloud, nothing escaping into space. And yet, the heat disappears as if it's being pulled inward, or redirected, or stored. Someone overlays the thermal data with the brightness pulses from earlier. The alignment is immediate. When brightness peaks, temperature peaks. When brightness falls, temperature collapses, not loosely. Not approximately. Exactly. The timing matches. Down to minutes, then seconds. Now the room feels different. Because two independent systems, light and heat, are behaving as one. That's coordination. That's feedback. That's not how dead objects behave. Someone suggests sublimation, hidden vents, internal pockets of volatile material. So they model it. But sublimation leaves traces. Gas clouds. Spectral signatures. There are none. No emissions. No expanding envelope. The object remains visually calm, almost peaceful, while internally something is happening. Something active. The thermal model is run again, with extreme assumptions. High conductivity, unusual materials, strange internal structure. Still doesn't work. To cool this fast, heat must be moved somewhere else, and there is only one place to put it. Inside. That realization lands hard, because storing heat means capacity. It means volume, pathways, design. Nature rarely builds storage. It wastes. It leaks. It dissipates. Efficiency is rare. And yet, this object is efficient. Too efficient. Late in the cycle, something even stranger appears. After a strong thermal surge, the temperature doesn't just drop, it overshoots. It becomes cooler than it should be. Cooler than equilibrium. As if the object isn't just shedding heat, but actively removing it. Actively managing it. That word slips into conversation now. Managing. Not releasing. Not losing. Managing. Like a system maintaining limits. Like a machine protecting itself from stress. The sun is harsher now. Radiation stronger. Yet the object never crosses a thermal threshold. Never runs away. Never destabilizes. It responds. Surge. Control. Release. Again and again. Someone points out the obvious problem. If this were natural, it should be falling apart. The thermal stress alone should fracture it. But nothing cracks. Nothing erupts. It holds together. As if built for this. The silence in the data room stretches. No one wants to be the first to say it, but the idea is already there. This looks like thermal regulation. A concept normally reserved for living things or machines. Not rocks, not ice, not visitors from deep space. A junior analyst asks a simple question. Where is the heat going? No one answers, because every answer is uncomfortable. If it's stored internally, then there is structure. If it's redirected, then there are pathways. If it's radiated selectively, then there is control. Control requires intention, or at least design. Someone tries to laugh it off. Maybe we just don't understand the material yet. That's possible. Science has been wrong before. But the laughter doesn't last, because misunderstanding usually creates mess, not order. This is order. Cold, quiet order. As perihelion draws closer, the cycles tighten. Surges come more often. Drops become sharper. Yet the object never spirals, never loses control. It behaves like something operating near limits, and staying just below them, that's not survival. That's strategy. Still, there is no message, no signal aimed outward, just behavior, just response, just heat moving with purpose. Outside the labs, the sun rises and sets. People go to work, eat dinner, sleep. They don't know that far away something ancient or something built is handling heat better than our models say is possible. The term machine appears once in a private comment. It is quickly deleted, replaced with unknown mechanism. But the thought doesn't delete itself, it lingers. Because machines don't have to speak to be machines. They don't need antennas or lights. They just need to function. And whatever 3i ATLAS is doing, it's functioning perfectly. As the next thermal surge rises and collapses again faster than physics allows, the question becomes unavoidable. Is this object simply losing heat? Or is it making choices about where that heat goes? Because one is natural. The other changes everything. And if it is managing itself, then this isn't just an object passing the sun. It's a system. And systems have purposes, which leads to the quietest, heaviest question of all. What is this system built to survive? And what happens when it no longer needs to? At some point, you stop blaming the data. That moment arrives quietly. No announcement. No dramatic pause. Just a screen full of numbers. And a growing realization that none of them are wrong. The light curve of 3i. ATLAS is supposed to be obedient. Brightness in, brightness out. Rotation in the middle. That's how it works. It's one of the oldest tools in astronomy. Simple enough to teach in a classroom. Reliable enough to build careers on. So when the curve refuses to settle, the instinct is denial. Someone says, run it again. So they do. Different assumptions. Different starting points. Different parameters. The curve bends anyway. It curves where it shouldn't. Flattens where it should rise. Spikes where no spike belongs. Like a compass needle drifting away from north. Every equation reaches for it and misses. The strangest part isn't that the model fails, it's how it fails. Usually, when math is wrong, it's obviously wrong. The curve explodes. Or collapses. But this one almost fits. Almost. Close enough to be tempting. Close enough to make you think, one more adjustment will fix it. But it never does. The light curve behaves like it's aware of the prediction, and choosing not to follow it. That thought makes people uncomfortable, so they bury it. Instead, they push harder on the math. They add layers. Rotation plus reflectivity. Reflectivity plus thermal response plus surface irregularities. The equations grow longer, messier. Still, the curve slips through the cracks. It bends back on itself, refuses to lock in, as if the object is changing state mid-rotation, as if what you saw a moment ago is no longer true. Someone overlays all known natural behaviors at once. Dust, ice, rock, gas. Nothing matches, not even close. The curve isn't random enough to be chaos, and not smooth enough to be nature. It exists in a narrow space between. That's the worst place for science, because that's where perception starts to matter. Late one night, someone asks a dangerous question. What if the curve isn't broken? What if we are reading it wrong? The room goes still, because perception is sacred in science. You trust instruments. You trust math, but perception can lie. Yet here it is, being challenged. The curve seems to imply the object isn't just rotating. It's changing while rotating, not eroding, not venting, adjusting. The brightness doesn't follow a simple spin, it reacts. Like different regions are activating at different times, not because of sunlight alone, but because of something internal. That idea pushes the conversation somewhere uncomfortable, because internal change implies agency. Not awareness, not intelligence, just response, and response requires feedback. Feedback requires systems. Systems require structure. No one wants to say the word machine, but the math keeps pointing there. The equations don't explode. They resist. They refuse to simplify. As if the object itself is complex by design. Another model is tried. This one assumes symmetry, fails. Another assumes chaos, fails. Another assumes hidden mass distribution, fails. Each failure leaves behind the same shape, that same stubborn curve, bent, defiant, unwilling to become predictable. Someone prints it out and pins it to the wall. Not for analysis, just to look at. From a distance, it almost looks intentional. A rise that stops early, a fall that pauses, like hesitation, like decision points. That thought doesn't make it into any paper, but it makes it into minds. The deeper they go, the clearer it becomes. The flaw isn't in the equations. The equations are doing their job. They are telling the truth. And the truth is simple. This object does not behave like a passive body. It does not respond only to forces. It responds to conditions. That's a line science doesn't cross lightly. Because once you admit that, you're no longer studying motion. You're studying behavior. Someone argues back. Behavior doesn't mean intention. True. A thermostat behaves. So does a circuit breaker. Neither thinks. But both are built. That comparison hangs heavy in the air, because now perception has shifted. The curve isn't asking what the object is made of anymore. It's asking how it operates. The sun keeps pulling it closer. Radiation increases. Stress increases. And still, the curve holds its strange shape, never snapping, never unraveling. The object remains stable, despite everything pushing against it. That stability feels earned, like something actively keeping balance. The math doesn't break, it points. It points toward a truth that no one wants to own yet, that the failure isn't in physics, it's in assumption. We assumed this thing was simple. We assumed it was dead. We assumed it was just another visitor. The light curve disagrees, softly, persistently, as if correcting us, as if saying, "You are measuring the wrong thing." Because maybe this isn't about rotation, or reflectivity, or heat. Maybe it's about adaptation, about a system passing through a harsh environment and adjusting itself just enough to survive. That idea doesn't make headlines, not yet, but it settles in. And once it settles, it's hard to shake. The curve is pinned back on the wall, unchanged, still refusing to fit, still bending against prediction. And with every failed model, one question grows heavier. If math can't explain this, is the flaw really in the numbers? Or is it in the way we see the universe itself? Because perception shapes interpretation, and interpretation shapes truth. And if our perception has been wrong this whole time, then this isn't just a strange object passing the sun. It's a mirror, quietly reflecting our limits back at us. As 3I, a TLAS continues its silent journey, the curve remains, waiting. Unfitted, unresolved, and for the first time since this began, the unease deepens into something else. Not fear, not excitement, something colder. The realization that the universe may be showing us something real, and we simply don't yet know how to look at it, which raises a final, unsettling thought. If this curve won't fit our models, what else have we been forcing to fit without noticing? And what happens next when the data demands that we change instead? The first response is always denial. Not loud denial, not angry denial. Quiet denial, the kind that hides behind checklists and calibration logs and long nights staring at screens. Because when something doesn't make sense, the safest answer is simple. We made a mistake. So that's where everyone starts. Teams across the world recheck their instruments. They rerun calibration files. They inspect timestamps, temperature drift, clock offsets. Every possible error is put on trial. A loose cable, a software update, a rounding bug buried deep in code written years ago. Something must be wrong, because the alternative is harder to live with. The anomaly is dissected piece by piece. One team blames sensor saturation. Another blames background stars bleeding into the signal. Someone suggests a timing error from Earth's rotation correction. All reasonable, all comforting. Each explanation promises a return to normal. So they test them. They strip the data down to raw counts. No filters, no smoothing. The pattern survives. They correct for Earth's motion again. Then again. Still there. They adjust exposure times, change apertures, reprocess with different algorithms. Nothing breaks the anomaly. It just sits there, unchanged, patient. The room fills with a strange tension. Not panic, embarrassment. Because scientists don't like being fooled. And if this is an error, it's a stubborn one. Emails start flying across time zones. Are you seeing this too? Check your calibration. Please confirm independently. At first, replies come slowly, then faster, then all at once. Yes, we see it. Yes, same timing. Yes, same curve. Different telescopes, different countries, different teams who don't share software, or hardware, or even language. And yet, the anomaly matches down to the detail. That's when disbelief goes global. Because one lab can be wrong, 10 labs can be wrong. but dozens of independent observatories spread across continents, agreeing on the same strange behavior. That's not error, that's reality. The doubt doesn't vanish, it changes shape. Now the question isn't what went wrong, it's what did we assume was right. People begin looking backwards, re-examining old data, old objects, old curves dismissed as noise. How many times did we smooth something away? How many oddities were rounded off, averaged out, forgotten? Because patterns only look obvious in hindsight, the realization creeps in slowly. What if this isn't new? What if it's just the first time we didn't look away? That thought is unsettling, because it means the universe hasn't changed. We have. The anomaly forces its way into meetings now, not as a side note, not as a curiosity, as a problem, a serious one. Because if this behavior is real, then our models aren't incomplete. They're missing something fundamental. Something about how matter behaves, or how systems survive stress, or how structure can exist in places we never expected. Someone says it out loud. We're not equipped for this. No one argues, because the tools are designed for passive objects. Rocks, ice, dust. Things that react, but don't respond. This thing responds. Not emotionally, not intelligently, but functionally. It changes when conditions change. It stabilizes when pressure rises. It behaves like something built to endure, and that shakes a quiet belief scientists carry without noticing, that the universe is mostly dead. Active forces, yes, but not active systems. Not like this. As the confirmations pile up, the tone shifts. Less debate, more silence. Less talk, more listening. People stop trying to kill the anomaly and start trying to understand it. But understanding requires admitting something uncomfortable, that for months, maybe years, we've been looking at the sky with blinders on, assuming every visitor is simple, assuming complexity belongs only to planets, or life, or us. This object doesn't fit that hierarchy. It sits in between. Not alive, not inert, just structured, purposeful in its behavior. Even if no purpose is known, the word unease starts appearing in private messages. Not fear, unease. The kind you feel when you realize the map might be wrong, but you're already deep into the forest. Outside the scientific world, nothing changes. There are no alerts, no warnings. The public sleeps peacefully beneath a sky that looks exactly the same as it always has. But inside observatories, the mood has shifted. This is no longer about proving someone wrong. It's about admitting we might have missed something big, something quiet, something that doesn't announce itself, but reveals its nature slowly, patiently, through behavior. One senior scientist makes a comment that lingers long after the call ends. If this were a machine, they say, half joking, we'd have ignored it for years because it wasn't trying to talk to us. No one laughs because that idea lands too close to home. We look for signals, for messages, for intent aimed outward. But what if the universe hides its strangest things in plain sight? What if complexity doesn't shout? What if it just works? The confirmations keep coming. The anomaly is real. The data is solid. The disbelief is gone. What replaces it is heavier. Responsibility. Because now, no one can say they didn't know. And knowing raises a final, troubling question. If this slipped past our expectations so easily, what else have we been watching without truly seeing? What other patterns have we smoothed away, labeled as noise, dismissed as error, simply because they didn't fit our story? As 3IATLAS continues its quiet journey toward perihelion, one thing is clear: the universe didn't change, our confidence did. And once confidence cracks, it never fully returns. It leaves behind awareness. And awareness brings a kind of unease that doesn't fade, because now every clean curve, every steady signal, every normal object is being looked at again with new eyes and a new fear that the sky may have been whispering to us all along, and we only just learned how to listen. It starts quietly, not with a discovery, but with a pause. After one pulse cycle ends, there is silence. Not randomness, not decay. Silence with length, measured, consistent. And then the pulses return. Same brightness, same shape. But the timing is different now, not chaotic. Adjusted. That's when someone notices the ratios. The intervals aren't drifting randomly. They relate to each other. 2 pulses, then a longer gap. 3 pulses, then silence again. Not evenly spaced. Not accidental, structured. Someone plots the timing on a separate chart. What appears isn't a smooth curve, but steps, ratios, clean relationships between on and off. Like beats in a pattern, like rests in music. The room doesn't react right away because recognizing structure changes everything. At first, they tell themselves it's coincidence. Human brains love patterns. We see faces in clouds, meaning where none exists. So they scramble to disprove it. They randomize the data, scramble timestamps, simulate noise. The ratios disappear in fake data, but in the real signal, they remain persistent. Unmoved, the pulses don't just repeat, they wait. And waiting is different from stopping. Waiting implies readiness, as if the object is doing something, then doing nothing, then doing it again, on purpose. That thought is dangerous because it doesn't require intelligence, only design. A washing machine runs cycles. A satellite enters sleep mode. A probe shuts down systems to conserve energy. None of these think. They function, and function leaves fingerprints. Ratios of fingerprints. Nature prefers chaos layered with order. This is order layered with restraint. The silence between pulses becomes as important as the pulses themselves. Not dead time, intentional gaps. Someone suggests resonance effects, harmonics, gravitational interaction. But the ratios don't line up with known forces. They line up with efficiency, energy in, energy out, pause, then repeat. The closer the object gets to perihelion, the more confident the pattern becomes. It's no longer searching for balance. It's maintaining it. Pulse, rest, pulse. Each cycle clean, each silence deliberate. The phrase artificial whisper appears in a private chat. No one claims it seriously, but no one deletes it either, because this doesn't feel like a trick anymore. Cosmic tricks are loud, chaotic, spectacular. This is quiet, subtle, almost polite, as if the object doesn't want attention, but isn't hiding either. That's what unsettles people most. If this were a signal, it's not aimed at us. It doesn't escalate. It doesn't repeat urgently. It just exists, like a system doing its job while the universe passes by. Someone asks a question that reframes everything. What if we're not being contacted, but overhearing? The room goes still, because overhearing implies something not meant for us. Internal cycles, maintenance routines, energy regulation. A machine doesn't care who's watching. It just runs. The pulses don't encode messages. They don't spell anything. They don't change when we observe them more closely. They remain indifferent. That indifference feels honest, and honesty makes the idea harder to dismiss. If this were meant to deceive, it would adapt to us. It doesn't. It adapts only to the sun, to heat, to exposure, to stress. The ratios shift slightly as conditions change, but the structure stays. Like a machine adjusting load, not seeking attention. The word artificial is finally spoken aloud, not in a meeting, not officially, in a hallway, quietly, tentatively. No one laughs, no one agrees either, but the word hangs there, between disbelief and possibility, because artificial doesn't mean alien intelligence. It doesn't mean intention toward Earth. It simply means not natural. Built, assembled, structured beyond chance, and that possibility reframes the silence. If this is artificial, then silence is expected. Machines don't announce themselves. They persist. They endure. They do what they were made to do. The pulses continue. Ratios hold. The gaps remain clean, and the object gives nothing else away. No message, no warning, just behavior, which may be the most honest thing it could offer. As days pass, the unease deepens into something heavier. Not fear, responsibility. Because if this is artificial, then it has an origin. And origin implies history. Someone built this, somewhere. So when? And sent it, or lost it, or left it. The universe suddenly feels less empty. Not crowded, just less alone. As 3I TLAS drifts onward, still pulsing, still resting, still indifferent to our attention, the question sharpens into something unavoidable. Is this truly a rare cosmic coincidence? A perfect storm of physics and perception? Or are we witnessing the quiet operation of something made that was never meant to be found? And if it was never meant to be found, what happens next, now that it has been? Because whispers don't need volume to change everything. Sometimes they just need to be real. The room sounds different now. Not louder, quieter, voices lower without anyone asking. Sentences slow down. Words are chosen carefully, then chosen again, because language matters. And the language has started to change. What was once called an object is now called a system. What was once an event is now called behavior. No announcement marks the shift. No vote. It just happens. Naturally, like everyone crossing an invisible line at the same time. Screens glow softly in dark rooms. Graphs scroll past. The pulses continue, steady, indifferent. But the people watching them are no longer the same. Earlier, curiosity drove the questions. Now it's restraint, because curiosity asks, what is this? Restraint asks, what happens if we're right? Inside these quiet rooms, no one wants to be first. First to say it's artificial. First to say it's built. First to say It has an origin that isn't random, because naming something gives it weight. And weight changes how the world reacts. Emails are shorter now, less speculation, more confirmations. Instead of excitement, there is caution, because excitement leaks, and leaks turn into headlines. This story isn't ready for headlines. Not yet. Someone rewrites a sentence in a draft report. They delete the word anomaly, replace it with persistent behavior. That choice feels small, but it isn't. An anomaly can be ignored. Behavior cannot. Behavior implies continuity. It implies rules. It implies something that will keep happening, whether we understand it or not. Another voice points out something uncomfortable. If this were truly random, they say, it would have failed by now. No one disagrees. Randomness breaks. Noise collapses. This hasn't. It has refined itself, adjusted, stayed within limits. That realization brings a quiet unease, because systems that survive harsh environments tend to be built for them, and space is the harshest environment there is. Someone else asks a question no one wants to answer. If this has an origin beyond chance, what does naming it actually do? Silence. Because naming doesn't change the thing. It changes us. It changes funding, policy, public fear. It changes the meaning of the sky. The human reaction isn't panic, it's hesitation. A collective pause before stepping into a story that can't be untold. Outside these rooms, the world remains loud. Cars pass, phones buzz. People argue about ordinary things. The sky above them looks the same as it did yesterday. That contrast feels surreal, because somewhere beyond the sun's glare, something is operating quietly, consistently, without regard for our schedules or our readiness. 4. And here we are, arguing over words. Someone says, we need to be careful not to project. They're right. Humans project all the time. We see meaning everywhere. Faces in rock, voices in static. But projection usually reveals us. This time, the data keeps pushing back. Every attempt to dismiss it leads to another confirmation, another clean alignment, another repeatable cycle. At some point, skepticism stops feeling scientific addition and starts feeling defensive. That's when the real human reaction begins. Not fear of the unknown, but fear of responsibility. Because if this is artificial, even in the most basic sense, then it exists within the same universe as us. Not separate, not unreachable. Just there, passing through, and that changes the story we tell ourselves. For generations, the universe has been framed as either dead or alive in ways we haven't found yet. This sits in between, not alive, not inert, something else. And humans are not good with something else. We like boxes, categories, planet, star, life. This refuses all three. A senior voice finally speaks, softly. Whatever this is, it's not reacting to us. That matters. Because fear usually assumes attention. Threat assumes intent. This shows neither. It behaves as if we don't exist, as if Earth is just another grain of dust in the background. That indifference is oddly comforting and deeply unsettling. Comforting because it means no threat. Unsettling because it means we are not special. Someone else adds, then why does it feel like we're intruding? No one answers, because that feeling doesn't come from the object. It comes from us, from the sense that we're watching something private, like peering through a window we didn't know was there. The pulses continue, the ratios hold, the system does what it has always done, and slowly the language stabilizes. Not alien, not artifact, just system of unknown origin. Cold, careful, safe. But behind those words, the meaning remains. This didn't happen by accident. That idea settles in quietly, not as a conclusion, but as a weight. Because chance creates chaos, this creates order. And order always comes from somewhere. As perihelion approaches, the meetings become shorter, less debate, more observation. It feels like waiting, not for proof, but for permission. Permission to say what everyone already feels, that we may be witnessing something made. Not for us, not against us, just made. And that possibility forces a deeper reflection. If the universe can hold systems like this, quiet, ancient, indifferent, then how many times have we looked up and assumed emptiness when there was simply silence? Silence is not absence, it's restraint. The human reaction, in the end, is not fear, it's humility. A subtle shift in posture, a quiet lowering of the voice, an awareness that the sky may contain more than we planned for and less explanation than we hoped. As the object continues on its path, unchanged by our debates, one final question lingers in every quiet room. If this has an origin beyond chance, are we truly ready to name it? Or are we still learning how to listen without forcing meaning, where patience is required? Because sometimes the most profound discoveries don't announce themselves. They wait. And the hardest part isn't seeing them. It's accepting what they imply about the universe and about us. There comes a moment when data stops being just data, not because it's incomplete, but because it's complete enough to disturb you. That moment arrives slowly, quietly, not in a lab, but in the mind. At first, the discovery belongs to science. Charts, numbers, patterns. Then the questions change. They stop asking how and start asking why. And that's where things become uncomfortable. Because why is not a scientific word. It belongs to philosophy, to meaning, to consciousness. And once that door opens, it doesn't close again. The realization spreads quietly through conversations. Not announced, not agreed upon, just felt. If intelligence can hide inside natural form, then intelligence doesn't need to look like us. It doesn't need faces, or voices, or cities. It only needs structure and purpose. And that thought reshapes everything. Because for centuries, humanity has searched the sky for signs of life that resemble us. Signals, messages, language. We expected intelligence to wave back. But what if intelligence doesn't announce itself? What if it doesn't care to be found? What if it survives instead? That idea lands hard. Because survival is older than communication. Survival is quiet. It adapts. It conserves. It waits. The object doesn't speak. It doesn't broadcast. It regulates. It responds. It endures. And suddenly, the question isn't, is this intelligent? It's, what do we mean by intelligence at all? Is intelligence awareness? Or is it function? Is it thought? Or is it design that outlasts thought? The more this question settles in, the more it reframes our place in the universe. Because if intelligence can exist without consciousness, or without communication, or without identity, then intelligence may be far more common than we ever imagined. Just hidden inside systems, hidden inside behavior, hidden inside patterns we once dismissed as noise. The discovery begins to feel less like a moment and more like a mirror, reflecting something uncomfortable back at us, that we have been searching for life while ignoring function, searching for voices while overlooking systems, searching for meaning while assuming nature must be simple. And now, that assumption is cracking. The awakening isn't loud. There are no speeches, no declarations, just a subtle shift in perception, a sense that observation itself has changed. Before, we believed observing the universe was passive. We looked, we measured, we categorized. Now, observation feels different. It feels participatory, because when you observe something that adapts, your observation becomes part of the environment. And that blurs a line humanity has relied on for comfort, the line between observer and observed. If this system responds only to heat and light, then we are irrelevant. But if it responds to conditions, then conditions include presence. And presence raises philosophical weight, not threat, not intention, just connection. The idea spreads beyond astronomy, into late-night conversations, into quiet, personal moments. People begin asking older questions with new urgency. What defines life? What defines intelligence? What defines purpose? And more unsettling, are we truly awake? Or have we only been looking? For most of history, awakening came from disruption. Fire, language, tools. Each forced humanity to redefine itself. This discovery feels different. It doesn't disrupt physically, it disrupts conceptually. It asks us to expand, not our technology, but our understanding. The object doesn't challenge our safety. It challenges our certainty. And certainty is something we protect fiercely. Because certainty tells us where we stand. But now, standing feels less stable. If intelligence can exist without awareness, without intent towards us, without recognition, then intelligence is not a conversation. It's a condition, a way matter organizes itself under pressure, a way systems endure time. That realization humbles us, because it suggests intelligence didn't begin with us, and it won't end with us. It exists independently, quietly, patiently, waiting for us to notice or not. The awakening question grows sharper. Where does observation end and awakening begin? Because awakening isn't about discovery. It's about recognition. Recognition that the universe may not be empty in the way we thought. Not full of beings watching us, but full of systems surviving alongside us, parallel, indifferent. And that indifference changes how special we feel. Not smaller, just less central. Some find that comforting, others don't, because centrality has been our anchor. The idea that the universe revolves around questions we ask, but this doesn't revolve around us. It existed before our curiosity and will continue after. That realization strips away something human and replaces it with something quieter. Perspective. The awakening is not about fear of the unknown. It's about letting go of assumptions we didn't know we were carrying. That intelligence must be loud. That purpose must be visible. That meaning must be shared. This object shares none of those, and yet it persists, which forces a final reflection. Maybe awakening isn't about finding intelligence out there. Maybe it's about recognizing intelligence everywhere, in forms that don't seek validation, forms that don't explain themselves, forms that simply are. As the object continues its silent passage, unchanged by our questions, the universe feels subtly different, not more dangerous, just deeper, more layered. And the sky above us, once a backdrop, now feels like a system of systems. Some simple, some complex, some we understand, others quietly waiting. The awakening question doesn't demand an answer. It demands humility. Because once you accept that intelligence can hide inside natural form, you can never look at the universe the same way again. Observation stops being passive. It becomes awareness, and awareness brings responsibility. Not to act, not to respond, but to acknowledge that we may not be alone in the way we imagined, and that intelligence doesn't need our recognition to exist. The object drifts on, silent, unconcerned, and in that silence, a truth settles gently into place. Awakening doesn't arrive with certainty. It arrives with questions we can't unask. And this one lingers longer than most. If intelligence can hide in plain sight, how much of the universe have we already seen without truly awakening to what it was showing us? And when the next pattern appears, will we recognize it sooner? Or will we once again mistake silence for emptiness? Perihelion arrives without ceremony. No flash, no warning, just a moment in time when the object reaches its closest point to the sun. For weeks, everything has built toward this. The heat, the pulses, the tight control. If something were going to fail, this would be the moment. The sun is brutal here. Radiation peaks, stress multiplies. Most objects unravel. Comets fracture. Surfaces crack. Jets erupt in chaos. But 3I, ATLAS does none of that. It holds. At first, everything continues as before. The pulses remain, faint but present. The thermal cycles still rise and fall, as if the system is steady, confident, prepared. Observers lean closer now, because perihelion isn't just a milestone. It's a test. If this thing is truly adaptive, this is where it proves it. Then, slowly, almost politely, something changes. The pulses weaken. Not abruptly, not dramatically. They fade, each cycle slightly dimmer than the last, each rise less pronounced, like a heartbeat slowing after a sprint. No alarms go off. No thresholds are crossed. The data just softens. Scientists check the instruments again. Of course they do. This feels too symbolic, but the instruments are fine. The readings are real. The pulses continue to weaken, then thin, then stretch. The timing loosens. The once clean ratios blur. Silence begins to slip between cycles, longer than before, heavier. And then, one cycle simply doesn't arrive. No pulse, no rise, no fall, just flat light, steady, unremarkable. Quiet, people wait. Minutes pass. Hours. Nothing returns. The pulses are gone. The room doesn't celebrate. No one exhales in relief. Because this doesn't feel like resolution. It feels like withdrawal. as if something has finished doing what it needed to do, or decided it no longer needs to do it. The thermal patterns follow. Surges no longer peak. Cooling no longer snaps. Temperature curves smooth out. Not chaotic. Not broken. Normal. Too normal. Like a system standing down. Someone whispers, "Maybe it's over," but no one knows what over means. Did the encounter with the sun exhaust it? Did perihelion trigger a shutdown? Or did the system simply complete its cycle? That distinction matters, because failure leaves traces, debris, instability, noise. This leaves none. The object remains intact, stable, calm, still moving, still silent. That silence weighs heavier than the pulses ever did, because pulses invite interpretation. Silence invites imagination. Data continues to stream in. Nothing unusual, no brightness modulation, no timing anomalies, just a quiet body drifting away from the sun, as if nothing ever happened. And that's the unsettling part. The behavior didn't collapse. It ended cleanly, purposefully, like a machine reaching the end of a task, or a system conserving energy once the danger has passed. Perihelion is behind it now. The heat lessens. Radiation falls, and with it, the need to respond. That idea settles slowly. If the pulses were a response to stress, then silence means safety, which suggests the object doesn't perform for us. It performs for conditions. And conditions have changed. Someone asks the question everyone avoids. Did it notice perihelion, or did it expect it? No one answers, because expectation implies foresight, and foresight implies design. But denial feels hollow now. The system behaved exactly when it needed to. No earlier, no later. It conserved energy, regulated heat, maintained structure, then stopped. No error codes, no runaway behavior. Just silence, the kind that follows completion. The charts look boring again. Flat lines, predictable curves. The universe appears to have returned to normal. But the people watching haven't, because once you've seen behavior, absence becomes meaningful. Silence is no longer neutral. It's a state, an intentional one. Some suggest the pulses were a transient phenomenon, a rare alignment of physics, a one-time trick. That explanation used to feel safe. Now it feels thin. Because tricks don't turn off cleanly. They decay. They fray at the edges. This didn't fray. It concluded. As days pass, confidence erodes, not in the data, but in interpretation. Was perihelion the trigger, the endpoint? Or just another step in a longer cycle we haven't seen yet? No one knows. And that not knowing feels different now. Before, it felt like ignorance. Now, it feels like being excluded. Like arriving after a conversation has already ended. The object drifts farther away, fainter, harder to observe. Soon, it will fade beyond useful range, taking its silence with it. And that raises a quiet fear, not of danger, but of missed understanding. What if this was the only moment it ever does this? What if the pulses only appear under extreme stress? What if we just witnessed a survival routine, designed to activate once every 1,000 years, or once every million, and now it's over? The idea that we might never see it again settles heavily, because discovery feels different when it can't be repeated. Science relies on repetition, on control. This offered neither, just a glimpse. And then, nothing, as 3I ETLAS continues its path out of the inner system. The sun grows smaller behind it, and the silence holds. No resurgence, no farewell, just steady motion into the dark. Someone puts it into words at last. It didn't stop existing. It stopped responding. That distinction matters, because stopping existing would mean failure. Stopping responding means choice, or at least conditional behavior. The encounter feels unfinished, not because we want answers, but because the system never acknowledged us at all. No escalation, no reaction to scrutiny. It didn't care that we were watching, and that indifference feels profound, because it suggests something unsettling. That the most important events in the universe may not involve us or notice us at all. As the final clean datasets are archived, the mood shifts again, not toward excitement, toward reflection. This wasn't contact. This wasn't communication. It was exposure. Exposure to the idea that complex systems can pass through our neighborhood, operate briefly, and move on, without ever announcing themselves. The pulses are gone. The silence remains, and in that silence, a question echoes louder than any signal ever could. Did the encounter truly end, or did it simply conclude on its own terms? Because if this system can wake under pressure and sleep when the danger passes, then somewhere out there, in deeper darkness, others may be waiting, inactive, unnoticed, until the universe pushes them just hard enough to respond again. And next time, will we recognize the silence sooner? Or will we only understand what we witnessed after it has already passed us by? Once more, without a word. In the end, nothing explodes. No warning lights. No final signal. The sky simply goes back to being the sky. Stars hold steady. Charts flatten. Night returns to routine. If you looked up now, you wouldn't see anything unusual. No scar where the mystery passed. No mark left behind. Just darkness and distance. 3I ETLAS continues outward, growing fainter with every passing day. Harder to track, easier to forget. Eventually, it slips beyond the reach of our instruments, and just like that, the encounter is over. Or at least, the observation is. The data, however, doesn't go anywhere. It's archived carefully, labeled, stored, clean files, clean folders, everything in its place. But nothing about it feels settled, because unresolved data has a weight to it. It doesn't disappear when you close the file. It lingers in quiet moments, in late nights, in the pause before someone speaks and decides not to. At first, there's relief. No threat emerged. No escalation. No crisis. The universe didn't change overnight, but relief is fragile because it rests on interpretation. And interpretation is exactly what failed us. The charts still show it. The pulses that shouldn't exist. The heat that moved too fast. The curves that refused to fit. All of it is still there, frozen in time, waiting. Some try to shrink it down. Call it a rare anomaly. A perfect storm of physics and perspective. Those words help for a while, but they don't explain the order. They don't explain the restraint. They don't explain why everything started and stopped so cleanly. Others lean the opposite direction. They whisper about machines, about artifacts, about intelligence that doesn't speak. Those words don't help either, because they raise questions we can't answer. Who built it? When? Why? And without answers, speculation feels hollow. So the community does what it always does. It moves on. New discoveries take center stage. New alerts light up screens. The universe is generous with distractions. But beneath the motion, something has shifted, subtly, permanently. Because even if this was a fleeting anomaly, it exposed a weakness. Not in our instruments, not in our math, in our expectations. We assumed the unknown would announce itself, with noise, with force, with intention aimed directly at us. But this didn't. It passed quietly, behaved precisely, and left without explanation. It didn't demand belief. It didn't demand attention. It simply existed on its own terms. And that's harder to process than fear, because fear has shape. Silence does not. The data sits unresolved, not because it's incomplete, but because it doesn't point in a single direction. Every explanation works, until it doesn't. Every theory explains part of it and fails the rest. That kind of mystery is dangerous, because it resists closure. It keeps returning, not as a problem, but as a question. Was this a cosmic fluke? A rare alignment of forces we don't yet understand? Possibly. Was it a distant machine? Ancient, indifferent, simply passing through? Also possible. Or was it something else entirely? Something that doesn't fit our categories yet? Something that signals a shift? Not in what the universe contains, but in how we recognize it. That possibility feels the heaviest, because it suggests the unknown hasn't changed. We have. For centuries, we've treated the universe like a stage. Objects enter, objects exit. We observe, we label. But this encounter didn't behave like a performance. It behaved like a process. And processes don't care who's watching. They unfold, then conclude, then move on. The quiet after feels strange because it's not empty. It's reflective. Every time someone opens the archived data, the same tension returns. Not excitement, responsibility, because now we know something. Not what it was, but what it wasn't. It wasn't chaotic. It wasn't careless. It wasn't random. And that knowledge can't be undone. Even if we never see another object like it, even if this remains unique, the shift has already happened. We will look differently now, at light curves that almost fit, at thermal data that cools too cleanly, at silence that feels intentional. We will hesitate before calling something noise. We will question our own certainty sooner. That is how understanding changes. Not with answers, but with caution. The sky above us hasn't changed, but our relationship to it has. We no longer assume emptiness just because nothing is speaking. We no longer assume simplicity just because something looks natural, because now we've seen how complexity can hide, how systems can blend in, how behavior can masquerade as coincidence. The quiet after is not an ending. It's a pause. A long one, the kind that invites reflection rather than reaction. Somewhere far beyond the sun, 3i ATLAS continues its journey. Cold, silent, unaware of the questions it left behind, or perhaps never concerned with them at all. And that might be the most unsettling truth, that whatever this was, it didn't come for us. It didn't care about us. It simply passed through, did what it needed to do, and left, leaving us to argue with ourselves. The data will remain archived. Future generations may reopen it with better tools, better models, different assumptions. They may laugh at our confusion or share it. We don't know. All we know is this: something crossed our path, behaved in ways we didn't expect, and departed without explanation. Whether it was a fleeting anomaly, a distant machine, or the first quiet signal that the unknown is more structured than we believed. One thing is certain: the universe did not become stranger that day. We simply noticed that it always was. And in that realization, the quiet after settles in, not as an absence, but as an invitation. To observe more carefully, to assume less, to listen even when nothing seems to be speaking. Because sometimes the most important shifts don't arrive with noise. They arrive with silence, and the silence is where understanding begins.